Welcome to the webinar, Cooperative Advocacy Internationally. Today you will hear from Aaliyah Ned, the Director of Government Relations at the National Cooperative Business Association, NCBA CLUSA, Erin O'Hearn, the International Advocacy and Regulatory Council at World Council, Ana Riquelme, the President of Conpacoop, Paraguay, Rodrigo Silva, the President of the National Association of Cooperatives of Chile, Danilo Salerno, Regional Director of ICA of the Americas. And to kick off our conversation, I will turn it over to our moderator, Aaliyah Ned. Thank you, Aaliyah.
Yeah, thank you, Luann, and thank you everyone for joining today. We really appreciate OCDC and Cooperatives of the Americas for the partnership in hosting this discussion and this excellent lineup of panelists we have. We are just really so excited to dive into this conversation on cooperative advocacy, which it seems like many folks are already engaged in. But as Luann mentioned, my name is Aaliyah Ned, and I serve as Director of Government Relations at the National Cooperative Business Association, CLUSA International, NCBA CLUSA. And we can go to the next slide here and see that NCBA CLUSA has served as the primary voice and apex association for cooperatives across all sectors in the United States for over 100 years. In line with NCBA CLUSA's mission to develop, advance, and protect cooperative enterprise and build a more inclusive economy, advocacy is really a key part of this work. As you all know, and as the webinar title says, we all have a role to play here. Around the globe, co-ops exist across every sector of our economy, and we know they create meaningful change in our everyday lives, creating opportunities for the people that use and own these businesses. And on the slide here, you can see what those sectors look like in the context of the United States. But globally, cooperatives as democratically owned and governed businesses empower member owners to have a voice, consumers to have a choice, and to level the playing field for businesses around the world. And 2025 is really a moment to make our voices heard, as it will be the International Year of Cooperatives in just a few weeks here, where national governments are called on around the globe to create policies that enable co-ops to build a better future for all. And policymakers of these governments will need our help and education to understand the difference that cooperatives make, and hearing your co-op story, which is at the core what advocacy is. It's the data and research, visualizing impact through tools like the World Cooperative Map on the screen here, hosting events at your co-op or for other cooperatives, and meeting with government officials to hear how they are approaching challenges within our countries and how cooperatives are a tool and a solution to address those challenges. So I know our panelists are eager to share their insights on advocacy, and you all are very excited to hear from them. Whether you're currently engaged in this work or looking for ways to get started, everyone has a role to play, and our expert panelists are here to share some of the ways. So turning to our first panelist, Erin, starting with you. We know credit unions are one of, if not the largest sector within the consumer cooperative space. Can you talk to us a little bit about your advocacy work with credit unions, what you're seeing in the industry, and some successes?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, Aaliyah, and what a great kickoff. I think that sets the tone nicely here for this conversation. I'm so excited to be a part of this conversation as we look ahead to an exciting year that we have this opportunity to be able to really raise the voice of cooperatives together as a similar structure to really advocate for each other. So as Aaliyah mentioned, my name is Erin O'Hearn. I am I'm on the International Advocacy team here with the World Council of Credit Unions. And so we will just go through the next couple of slides very quickly, just to give folks a sense of the industry that we're talking about. I know we have cooperatives from quite a few different industry sectors. So if we could just click to that next slide, you'll see that credit unions, of course, like many other cooperatives, were member owned. We are democratically controlled by our members. We feel very passionately about one member, one vote. It is what sets us apart from other financial institutions, with a mission to improve the financial lives of our members. And really focused on promoting financial inclusion. We fill an important gap within the financial services ecosystem to make sure that everyone has access to dignified financial services that are safe, reliable. You know, our roots and our history really comes from this lack of access for many into financial services. And so we want to make sure that everyone within our communities have access to a local, reliable source. At World Council of Credit Unions, we advocate for the global credit union system in front of international standard setting bodies. We are hyper-focused on the regulatory environment to make sure that we are creating an enabling environment. We also work closely with our members to help support their regional and national advocacy, to support the work that they're doing with their national level regulators and their governments. And we also want to make sure that we're connecting credit unions and all forms of cooperatives together in face-to-face virtual engagements to make sure that we're able to really share those best practices that we can all benefit from. So I think we'll jump to the next slide again. We'll move through this just very quickly to get to the heart of the conversation, but just to give folks a sense of the size of the industry that we're talking about. While World Council and our members range from very small in asset size and in terms of the number of locations within a country. We may have, you know, one credit union within a country, or we may have thousands within a country. So we serve all different sizes, but overall, as a system, there are credit unions in over 100 countries, serving over 400 million members. So certainly this is an area that we want to make sure that we continue to leverage and work together. While everyone may be really focused on their local community, there's such a great level of collaboration and support worldwide to be able to help their neighbors with their challenges and to share those best practices. All right, I think we'll head to the next slide and really kind of jump into this conversation. And I know we want to be brief to make sure there's such great panelists coming up, and I know a lot of great questions that have already been submitted. So we want to make sure we have time for that. But I was asked just to share a quick example of one of the recent advocacy stories. And you'll see a link in the bottom right corner if you want to hear directly from the leader within the credit union system in Cayman Islands and the regional leader within the Caribbean. But I thought this was a great example of some of the challenges that are faced in many countries with surprise legislation, with legislation or regulation that can be proposed with a very short amount of time to be able to comment, to be able to advocate, and effectively because of a myriad of reasons, but perhaps maybe a lack of understanding of the impact regulation can have on a system, or especially one like ours that is focused on serving the community rather than growing profits, may not have the resources to pivot and adapt as quickly to huge unexpected costs that come from regulatory bodies. So within the Cayman Islands, they were faced with a situation where they had a very short time frame to be able to respond to a consultation that increased their actual annual examination and regulatory oversight fee and registration fee that they pay to be registered as a credit union, as a cooperative within their country, would effectively end their ability to continue to really serve their members by trying to have to pay this fee. There was clearly a challenge in terms of educating the regulators on the impact that that would have. So they dove in so quickly to be able to activate their members. I think that really demonstrated the strength of a cooperative in terms of putting out the notice, sharing information very quickly with their members to say, our institution is at risk of long-term sustainability if this particular provision goes into effect. So they went on radio stations, they engaged with members directly, they engaged with regulators and government officials, both face-to-face through written communication, on the radio station that they hosted for several hours, where they had members calling in to share their support, and the great stories that the credit unions had helped them in terms of their savings, in terms of their financial well-being. They were able to compile those stories and to really foster that support to show the government officials not only here is the value and the impact your credit unions have within the financial ecosystem of the Cayman Islands, but here is the on the ground local impact that it's having within the credit union system. So this is how we're helping your constituents in terms of their financial well-being. So they were able to compile those stories, share those stories, put pressure on that short time frame that they had to really engage. I think it was an extraordinary example of just a very quick turnaround and engagement with their members. Then in addition to that, they reached out to their neighbors, they reached out to their regional association, and then they reached out to the World Council for global support as well. And so we were able to engage with joint letters, joint conversations to show not only is this just about an individual cooperative within the Cayman Islands, but within the Caribbean and globally. So we were able to share that support, share the best practice information about the impact credit unions can have, what reasonable fees mean, and how to make sure that those regulations work for the credit unions in the Cayman Islands. So was a nice success story in terms of they did then withdraw that proposal, understanding the impact that it would have, and did not see any changes related to that. So it was a great success. We, of course, are on the lookout as there are many systems facing that. We've seen legislation proposed in countries across the globe that would either end the credit union system by the severe regulations in terms of not allowing new members, not allowing them to take deposits, but have seen quite a bit of legislation in terms of also just applying the exact same regulations as large international banks, those that are not appropriately tailored to the size, risk, and complexity of the financial institution that they're overseeing. So I know we also have interpretation going, so I'm going to pause just a little bit to make sure everything is caught up. But then also want to just quickly share in the last minute here the advocacy challenges and trends that we're seeing. So I imagine this resonates with many other cooperative industries, but excited for this conversation today in terms of the real challenge in making sure that we can educate governments and individual regulators on that cooperative difference. So it has been always a two-step advocacy process, not just to outline the policy implications and the regulatory changes that we need as a credit union industry, but our first step is always educating on the cooperative model, why that's different, why it needs to be regulated differently, and the impact, like our purpose, our mission. We are different from other financial institutions in terms of our mission and purpose to really reach underserved communities. So that trend in terms of consistently having to educate as new regulators are elected. This was certainly the year of the elections, with I think over half of the population voting this year on new government representatives. So we continue that education process, but also that impact, collecting stories, sharing that local impact continues to be a challenge. One unique challenge too that we're noticing quite a bit this year that I'll just share quickly in this last minute is ensuring that there are proportional regulations at both the international standard setter level in terms of the guidance that they issue for national governments to follow, but then also on the flip side that national level governments are taking advantage of that flexibility that is granted to then implement proportional regulations at the national level. It really is a twofold process and shows the need and challenge that we have to make sure that we are working together at all levels, that we're talking to international standard setters, we're talking to regional standard setters, and we're certainly talking to national level governments to make sure that at every level they understand cooperatives, the credit union mission, but then actually utilizing any flexibility they have in the regulations, taking that time and that extra step to make sure that those regulations are proportionate and appropriate to enable credit unions to complete their mission. So you'll see just a link in that podcast too, and invite you to check out our website with other details. But I'm going to pause there and stop there and let Leah come back on. I just want to make sure that everyone has time to engage in this conversation, because so excited to be a part of this larger cooperative movement and what we can do together.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Erin, for such a great example of how cooperative members can bridge the knowledge gap for government officials and pull in folks from all aspects of the community and show not just the national impact, but global impacts of policies that don't quite recognize or understand the cooperative model. So we know advocacy is preventing harmful laws and regulations in addition to getting laws that enable and support co-ops. And to speak to an example of regulatory and enabling legislation, I want to turn to Ana Riquelme, president of the Paraguay Apex Association of Cooperatives. Ana, thank you so much for being here, and we wanted to hear a little more about your work on the National Worker Co-ops Regulation Act in Paraguay.
Muy buenos días, muchas gracias por la
Good morning.
invitación.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
Realmente para nosotros un honor
For
de
us, it
participar
is
en este
an honor
webinar,
to participate in this
donde
webinar
nos proponen
in which
hablar sobre la
we are being
incidencia
asked to
cooperativa
talk about
y además
the
nos dicen
cooperative
que todos tenemos
incidents,
un papel que
and
desempeñar.
we definitely have all
The
have
interpreter, please
Mi
switch to.
organización tiene 33 años de haber sido creada. La Confederación Paraguaya
It has been created 33 years ago. The Paraguayan Confederation of Compacop, is a core of two organizations of second degree that brings together more than 350 cooperatives and also brings together more than 1,400,000 members of cooperatives throughout all these cooperative organizations in a population that we have in the country about 7 million and 1,900,000 members. Our organization reaches many partners individually throughout the country, if the cooperative movement, and our main process is the advocacy for trade unions, work with a lot of legal standards. In our national constitution of 1992, we have an article that provides or guarantees our autonomy, our free organization, and particularly it provides a mandate for the government of Paraguay to promote cooperative education from the principles as instruments for national development. This article of the Constitution is the foundation of all our legal standards that we have been working with since the end of the dictatorship, one of the longest dictatorships in America, which lasted 35 years. And it was in these 35 years where we had a prohibition to get together to develop common labor. This is why in our country, the strong development of the cooperative sector took place in the financial sector, in savings and loans, and production cooperatives, mostly in the agricultural sector. After the end of the dictatorship, the new standards have created other ways for cooperative organization. However, our law only allows the establishment of cooperatives from 20 people or more, and this has restricted the development of other types of cooperatives. I have been asked to talk a little bit about work cooperatives in Paraguay, and we have very few because of this situation in particular. It isn't easy to bring together 20 persons to build a new work cooperative. We have very few in the country for this reason, but this is why the effort has been taking place from the Paraguayan Confederation. We have several instruments from 2006, 2008, 2013, 2011. We did a common effort with other organizations of Mercosur, where we had the support of our colleagues from Uruguay who have very developed this modality, and with a technician that's the Cooperative of the Americas and that knows very well our reality in this sense about work cooperatives, labor cooperatives. In 2013, as a conclusion of this effort that has been carried out with our colleagues supporting us from Uruguay, and uh, we realized that we needed a special law for labor cooperatives, and we started trying to produce within the cooperative movement a new proposal for this law presented in 2021 by one of the members of the National Congress, a cooperative leader who comes from the production sector and who has helped us, has joined us in this effort. And among all of them, we were able to achieve a law for labor cooperatives in 2021. However, this law still needs to be to have bylaws, and for the creation of the bylaws, we're also requiring the experience of other organizations that have developed labor cooperatives. Then we asked for the help of the Confederation, which is, of course, we're a member of Cooperatives of the Americas on the International Cooperative Alliance, and we looked for Cooperative of the Americas, CICOP America, CICOP Mercosur, and we were able to produce an event. It was a very interesting activity for us. On June 6, 2024, we were within the Paraguayan Confederation of Cooperatives in this period of the activities of the parliament. We were able to have one of these members presiding the session on solidarity and economy, and were able to produce a movement within this commission, within these members of parliament and the National Institute of Cooperativism and the confederations together to try to get this law properly developed with its bylaws to eventually help us produce labor cooperatives and develop the entrepreneurs that are already part of the cooperative movement and the micro enterprises that have already been developed, but not from the cooperative perspective. It is part of this effort to, as I said, we were able to host this very important activity with the collaboration of Cooperative of the Americas, with the support of technicians, some people that helped us from Colombia, but particularly Copa Americas and Copa Mercosur have been collaborating with us by transmitting their experience and all the regulations in the development of work cooperatives. This is the people that came from Brazil, Argentina, who came to help us for an entire week and worked with our legal advisors, with the representatives of the sector in the National Institute of Cooperativism, which is the government entity that is issuing the standards for the cooperative movement, and also the chamber commission of the National Parliament. As a result of this event, where we were able to host the president of Cooperatives of the Americas, Dr. Graciela Fernandez, who, of course, provided great presence and also repercussion within the parliament, within the Paraguayan society, and particularly more within the cooperative movement, we had a series of legal advisors and leaders from the cooperative movement who were able to work with the bylaws for the law. And I can tell you today that the bylaws have been finished, and we are waiting for approval by the executive. So in order for 2025 to be the first year when we will be able to enjoy a legal organization for all our entrepreneurs and micro entrepreneurs that are interested in the development of these cooperatives. Within our expectations, we have cooperative incubators. We have also been talking about with Cooperative of the Americas. And I am mentioning all this because this event, we must say that it showed to us that we all have a role in the development of the cooperatives, locally as well as from the international experiences. And I believe that being linked to institutions such as Cooperative of the Americas or the International Cooperative Alliance are aspects that allow us to exchange conversations, information, experiences, and looking how can we work better for our objectives. In Paraguay, we have a very good communication with different powers of the government to be able to produce legal processes that will help us in our development. And it is in this sense, and I think maybe one of the most important aspects is what is in our constitution, that the state will promote cooperative organizations through formal education and will also become an instrument for the national development. We have a law from 2022, and we're working with our Ministry of Education and Science so that next year we can begin the plans of the Ministry of Science and Education incorporating cooperative education from the first level until the just middle school. Our young people, our children and young people are going to receive 12 years about the importance of cooperatives and how to work together from the cooperative identity and our values, and particularly the doctrine that brings us all together in the cooperative movement. Once again, I just want to thank for this invitation that we received. We were asked to share with you what we are doing and what we do to face this challenge, which has not been thoroughly developed in Paraguay, but now has the expectations to be further developed. We in Paraguay have more than 750,000 micro enterprises registered, and 450,000 are linked and financed by the cooperative movement. These micro enterprises, we want to turn them into labor cooperatives when this law reaches its bylaws, has its bylaws, and is ready to be implemented. And we want it to become a tool for our activities. We want to start in 2025 within the International Year as a new type and innovation in our movement, and of course, with the help and the experience of all the cooperative members in our region who have already developed this type more thoroughly.
Thank you so much, Ana, for sharing about CompaCoop's work across sectors, pulling in partners at the national and regional level to build on the longstanding efforts and momentum of our movement. And that's so exciting to hear about the opportunity in 2025, not just with the Year of Co-ops, but for cooperators in Paraguay. So now, in that same thread of continued partnership, I want to invite Rodrigo Silva, president of the National Association of Cooperatives in Chile, to talk about your work and advocacy to create the National Institute of Cooperatives.
Very well. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Very warm welcome to ASI and NCBA, and also very happy to be able to connect also to the president of the Cooperatives of the U.S., the members of the panel, Eric Cogner, Ana, Danilo. Great presentation, impressive what is happening in the U.S. in general, and Paraguay, a country that is very well organized around cooperativism. I would like also to say hello to the movement, International Cooperative Movement, and the 2 million members of the cooperative movement in Chile. And I am very proud to be able to share with you in this event and how this process has become important, how cooperatives have become important for the development of cooperatives in our country, always in the environment of the members of the panel with our entity, cooperative identity, which is different from any other business model. We are an organization of third degree of the Chilean cooperative movement. We exist since 2018, and we did create a group to bring together at the national level of the cooperatives from different productive sectors. In the particular case of our association, we have agro-industry, housing, credit, water, electric distribution, and others. And we are present throughout Chile, and we have about 2 million members and representation of 7% of cooperatives in our country. It's been some time since we have been working and articulating the activities at the cooperative level. In our confederation, we have been within different contexts of our country, adapting to the circumstances, maybe sometimes eliminating barriers, and always with the goal of making our model more participative, more active, and producing greater impact in the social development of our country. Within the objectives that we've had set for ourselves, it has been very important to become representatives of the cooperative movement to the private and public world in our country. And it is very important because of the history of the Chilean policy in the development of public policies related to the cooperative movement, making it providing more impact for the movement. I would like to tell you how we get organized and how we can have influence for cooperatives in Chile. We have, in different instances in our country, with the support also of ICA, we are very active, and we have been able to produce a very important level of trust in our country. For this purpose, we have developed an association with a cooperative level with the highest union standards. We have a council of administration with constant meetings. We also have committees supporting different instances with a very high participation of all the member federations, with not only the participation of the leaders, but also the high executives of the cooperatives. We also have an executive team which help us develop our activities, promote our work in our very active executive team, as well as producing and dealing with a series of issues that may seem not as important, however, have a great influence, because to achieve this objective, we need to have the resources. And something important also that I want to share in our vision is that I feel that this federation is led by the cooperatives that are mostly developed in our country, with, of course, all the participation of the cooperatives and respecting a basic principle mentioned by one of the panel members, is one member, one vote. it is important within this cooperative interaction that we promote the principles of cooperation, working with cooperation between the member groups and promoting base cooperatives at the national level as well as international. Another important topic for us to produce incidents is to have the advice of experts in strategic topics and develop a strategic plan that is reviewed every year and following the objectives. The topic of the consulting service is very important when we're talking about particularly public policy. We have, of course, work developing a better understanding of our relationship with the government and parliaments, but there are there are advisors also that help us progress faster, and I will tell you a little bit more about it later. It is also very important to understand that being obvious, sometimes we have to generate some long-term perspectives, which means that we need to stay in touch and work with the governments, with all the areas, all the political parties, just to mention some concepts, and that our topic is not a party-related policy issue. It has nothing to do with the government in turn. It goes beyond that. And although we have done this with all the governments, I still want to tell you that particularly with the current government, there is a very special understanding towards the cooperative movement, which we are very thankful for. It is also very important to work with the members of the parliament and the civil society to produce policies that will last in time. We are convinced that it is important to have a process strengthening our trade union, and it is also very important to look inside. It's something important that we say it's important to relate to the outside, but how are we relating inside? Because we need to be in agreement and we need to be in cooperation, and it is very important how we manage any disagreement to be able to maintain the purposes of the council. This is how everything is promoted with the most common topics, but there are also different views, different subjects and topics that need to be approached. We have been capitalizing on some of the big achievements, those that are directly connected to these two objectives, is being a valid, trustworthy representative in the public and private world, and to participate actively in the public policies related to the development of the cooperative movement. We have worked very hard with different instances of the public-private world. Very recently in Chile, we went through a political event that has been complex, and some have tried to change the constitution between 22 and 23. There were two constitutional proposals that were not approved. However, that in those two projects that were not approved as confederation, and in both proposals, we had the incorporation express of the cooperative model. And maybe it will call your attention, but in Chile, it's not in there yet. And also reinforcing the right to association. I wanted to mention, because within these processes where we had the participation of the entire political world and we were able to influence them, I also wanted to say that these topics require stable relationships. We were able to establish some connections in the cooperative topic, where we were able to connect with different representatives from different political parties and throughout Chile, and with people with different areas, center, right, left, and they're all members of our cooperatives. And right now, I also want to tell you that we are preparing the party of deputies. We are happy because there is a good percentage of sectors interested in becoming deputies, and we have started meetings to promote this effort. This is important because it allows us to discuss the contributions we can have to the cooperative world. That would be government, parliament, are both very relevant topics, and this is why we always recommend to work regularly with the different sensitivities. And as far as the participation of political policies related to the cooperative business model, we are also integrating some of the public-private advices received the Ministry of Economy, for example, that looks for development of the cooperative movement and the cooperative economy. We have been very active dealing with topics such as the financing of savings and loans cooperatives. Our confederation also has influence in different laws. In December 23, there is a participation of the resilience of the cooperative sector, financial sector, and the possibility of approaching it in case of a financial crisis. This is very important for us because this broke a historic discrimination in one of the laws of the central bank, in which only access was possible for banks and financing companies. And in Chile, to change the law of the central bank, it requires qualified majority, and it took us years to be able to achieve a point where we can say, well, now we can change it. And this is why the savings and loans cooperatives, and very voluntarily, and with the principle of proportionality, recognizing the cooperatives, we have been able to part of the Central Bank of Chile, and there will also be some demands, and it has also been determined that there is a certain grade for this purpose. And also working very significantly for many years, we are determining that this law can be promoted, and we've done excellent efforts, benchmarks throughout the world, and we were able to see how developed countries have non-banking institutions, or savings and loans as we call them, have access to payment services and the central bank. This heterogeneity is providing a diversity to the base banking system as such, and will give us the condition to develop better, guaranteeing the stability and well as the sustainability of the savings and loans cooperatives in Chile. This is something that has been happening in Chile. We talked to the International Monetary Fund because the government hired the Monetary Fund. We did some financial analysis, and we were able to participate from the perspective of our associations, from Coopera, where there's other cooperatives of savings and loans. They were also helping us with the process, as Confia, Concretal, and others of cooperatives that have been working with us in this area. This project, I can tell you that besides being of many years, has also been a project possible thanks to our work. We have been working as associations with the presidential candidates, not only from this election, but from before. When the presidential candidates are organized, we begin our work, and particularly, this is a law resulting from the previous government, but which is approved here. But in a work pre-installation of the government, we were able to influence in the government programs, in the legislative agenda of the Ministry of Finance, and of course with their participation, but our incidence, that the program could also have access to the central bank, access of cooperatives to the central bank. I can tell you later also about the forming of the institute in Chile, which is part of a result of what we have been able to influence 6 years approximately ago, we gave to our candidates a program that was of benefit to the cooperative sector, and the candidates were able to participate and develop some programs, some government programs, and particularly President Gabriel Goodrich. I want to highlight that the main authorities of the financial, the Ministry of Finance, were participating. This is December 23, and this was promoted by Coopera, Copeud, and all the cooperatives. Also, it's important to listen that we have, this is important for the cooperatives in Chile. We are important stakeholders, but it is also very important to interact with different institutions and to, the activities have activity increased 175%. There's 23 government programs that have the purpose of promoting and developing the cooperative movement in Chile. This wasn't even possible to think of, to imagine of not long ago. So we feel very proud to be able to participate actively in these processes for the better development of the cooperatives in Chile. Also, we have been able to adjust the to the regulatory framework to recognize the particularities of the cooperative in the different areas in which we operate, particularly the central bank of the law bills that we have been able to promote. In the case of these cooperatives today in Chile, there is nothing that is, everything is being consulted with the cooperative program to see what we can contribute. There is a new project for a development agency that has been actively collaborating with the cooperative association. But it is very important is the conformation of INAC, which is, it took place last year, is being implemented this year, and I'll tell you a little bit about this. I told you that since 2017, we got together, we were able to present proposals to the different presidential candidates. This was consolidated slowly until finally we were able to hand a document to the current government of President Boric, particularly in the Ministry of Economy, a proposal of how to do this. And in truth, the work that was done for the association was extremely important because we were able to get the government to accept the proposal from the National Association, taking consideration all the theoretical and practical aspects. We were looking at the experiences and different realities in different parts of the world. And the participation was very active in this formation, and it was possible also to develop a government with the participation of the public and private sector, or with the cooperative sector. And we have the organizations with the most influence for the public offering in the country of programs that are the Ministry of Economy, Cercotec, INDAC, and the two confederations that exist in Chile today. And this initiative, which became official in March through the committee called Corfo, it's a very important organization in Chile that has the purpose of promoting the general economy, and the current directory is connected to the cooperative world, and also we agreed with the government that it will also be linked to the cooperative world. At this time, I am presiding this organization together with a directorship and a council that is part of the private world. We face many challenges, of course. There are many expectations for this new organization, this new institution, because it is going to help us organize better the strategic guidelines of the different programs for the support of the cooperatives. Also, this institution has to assist the public organizations that wish to improve their offering, and is also
And
has the purpose
Rodrigo, thank you so
of
much
strengthening.
for sharing this a great example and really diving in. I know folks are really eager to learn more, and folks will be sharing additional questions. But you provided such an excellent example of how we have to partner and cooperate among cooperatives to advance our ultimate goals here. But I know folks are really eager to hear how they can partner with regional organizations. So I want to invite Danilo Salerno from such a great partner for NCBA CLUSA and all of us here with ICA Americas. Danilo.
Thank you very much, colleagues, for organizing such an interesting event and looking at the number of participants. There is a room of interest and collaboration at every level on this topic. Thank you also, Mr. Rodrigo Silva and Anna Riquelme for their participation and their commitment, their engagement with Cooperative of the Americas, always at every level, with every initiative. I will then switch to Spanish, which the language I most represents the region.
So I will be presenting the activity of incidents in the context of Cooperative of the Americas, which is very useful. We are the region of the Cooperative Alliance International for Latin America, for the entire American continent, with offices in Costa Rica since 1990. We represent more than 94 organizations of these 24 countries in the region. And our structure, we get to see it later, is a typical regional organization guided by membership and the administration council with 12 representatives, 2 for country, where we have member organizations, plus the committees by topic and section, as well as the structure of the office that is in charge of membership activities, administration, and cooperative development. All this joined and supervised by the Internal Auditing Committee. These committees from the different sectors, the Copa Americas, which you probably know about, of work and services, presided by Rodrigo Silva, who has a great proactive activity in our organization, as well as everybody else, on everything that has to do with the credit and financial organization and housing, also for gender equality, as well as commissions and work groups, among which a network of public organizations for the promotion of cooperativism created in the region after the Resolution 193 of ILO for the promotion of the cooperatives, and which today represents 15 public organizations, among which we have INAP from Chile and INCOP from Paraguay. These are some of the alliances that throughout the years we have been able to develop in different intergovernmental entities, international organizations, with private entities of the solidarity, the social economy, which are not necessarily related to our sector, as you can see with the logo in event. Alliance and partnership mean for us a memorandum of understanding and cooperation, as well as specific activities. And speaking about this topic, this MOU and the activities that we have done with organizations from 2018 until now, we have contributed the MOUs globally with FAO and in the area, also with ICA, in cooperation of agriculture, and with a very important project of the European Union, which is the Alliance. In 2019, we've added an alliance with the Organization of the American States, the OAS. In 2020, with the signature of the MOU with the ECLAC. And this has financed a very important study in 8 countries for seeing and mapping the way in which and who are the sectors that are promoting public policies for cooperativism. It is a very important study with a relevant importance for all of us. In 2021, during the pandemic, we signed another MOU with ALARI, the Latin American Association of Economic Integration, as well as cooperations with FAO and IOM. In 2022, we had collaborations with UN Women as well as LifeWatch ERI, which is a consortium of study of academy for research and agriculture, as well as applied to the topic of science. In 2023, with the Andalusian School Social Economy Europe, we have been able to increase our projection and strengthen relationships for the first time, historically important, with the Social and Economic Council of the United Nations, and renewing it in the ones that are taking place this year. After these incidents activities, a big family of this purpose, and this advocacy also for the group of the World Bank, because we're interested in increasing and maybe creating an impact fund by cooperative for cooperatives. And on MOU, we have renewed our commitment with the Latin American Parliament, which last week approved a framework law for agricultural cooperatives throughout the region of Latin America and the Caribbean, and also renewed the agreement with FAO, which is a global agreement, and it can benefit the entire region, the entire organization. And also presenting very briefly something else we're doing for our incidents. And it has responded to all the committee of the allied parts for the coordination and promotion and celebration of the International Year. We have been able to interpret the resolution of the United Nations, creating a common group and supporting our committees for the coordination of the visibility of the different organizations. And this is part of what has been able to be part of the agreement. It is part of what we have been able to do with FAO here in Santiago, and also establishing a common calendar to conciliate with the national calendars, support the national committees, and to provide or interpret standards for the creation of the national committees as established in the resolution of the United Nations. We are creating now a website which will be available next week for participating with our events also. And finally, we are going to be launching our regional agenda at the beginning of the year by presenting formally some of our programs. These are some the signature of the global agreement with FAO, and these are some of the persons that have participated, many of the people who have helped us for the creation of this, all the parties, not only institutional, but every stakeholder of different nature are part of this committee. You can see here the mission of the United Nations in Chile. Also with the ambassador and the regional director of FAO, of UNESCO, of ILO, myself, president from the ICA, CLAC, ICA, ALADI, the European Union. These public institutions for Uruguay, Mexico, Panama, Honduras, Brazil, Chile, Paraguay, and finally, experts of cooperative law who are in charge of investigations, such as Ms. Brokovich from Economy Europe, and a group of journalists, independent journalists, a foundation, as well as some of the members of our administration council, and a person representing every committee. We have performed, we have created 4 events, and that's the end of my presentation. And we are hoping we can have your participation. The first that is going to happen within the headquarters of ECLAC for the first time. ECLAC with ICA is going to be organizing in their facilities this year an event on productivity and territorial development. The second event is going to be at the end of August in Cancun, Mexico, and it will be dedicated. It's going to be organized together with the World Bank on how the cooperative finance can promote the integration of sectors, access to the market, and also support the development of the 2030 agenda through the cooperatives. We have another event in Paraguay from 7 to 10 October dedicated to cooperation for equity and future generations. And the final event is going to be addressed to economy and the care society. Is going to take place in Panama, and it will be co-organized with UN Women, ILO, La PAO, and other important organizations. All the events are going to have the participation of our members, open to the public, and so part of the celebrations for the international year. So the message is that all sectors are important and all have to be looked after to be able to continue growing as cooperatives.
Thank you so much, Danilo, for this excellent overview of all of the great work that ICA Americas does to support the cooperative movement regionally and how we can partner globally to take full advantage of 2025 and such a jam-packed agenda. I will invite all of the panelists back up just for a few rapid fire questions in the last 3 minutes remaining here. I think Danilo answered one, which is how folks can get involved with ICA Americas. And I'm sure the rest of our panelists would be happy to share how to learn more about their organization. So just quickly from our panelists, starting with Aaron, can we share 1 to 2 key strategies folks can implement to ensure that members of the community feel a sense of ownership and commitment to cooperatives? 1 to 2 key strategies very quickly, Aaron.
Yeah, I think maybe the top one here that comes to mind that I think all of the panelists have mentioned is education. So that happens at both the regulator and government level. I know Rodrigo had some nice comments around, making those connections, building those relationships, but that's also true for the members to understand that the services that they're receiving, the impact that they're feeling in their own lives, is contingent on kind of coming together collectively to raise that voice and sharing those impacts and those challenges along the way. So really education in terms of activating members and raising their voice to share that message.
Fantastic. And Dr. Anna, please, 1 to 2 key strategies.
I share with her that definitely education is one of the main ones. We have this big challenge in a community that, as I explained, has been educated into individualism, the cooperativist movement has important role of not only making them understand the cooperative doctrine, the values and the principles, but also training our young people within a process of cooperation that my generation at least was never prepared to handle. We do have a foundation from our families, as probably also the church, that have taught us about the importance of working together and helping others. And in Paraguay, it's part of our DNA to be Yopoi in Guarani, which means mutual aid. And if the Guaranis were able to work in this manner, and we've been able to maintain our culture, our language, our faith, I think then, and we guarantee for the team that is working in this process that incorporating education within the curricular activities for these activities and the history that we have in our country is definitely going to provide a great contribution to the cooperative movement at the national level, and hopefully truly to obtain all the expected results to be able to transmit to other members of cooperatives.
Yes, education and training is so important. And Rodrigo, could you just share one key strategy to effectively legislate bodies? Just one key strategy quickly, and then we'll close out with Daniela on one key strategy for ICA.
Well, I think that what's important is to know, to learn the requirements by sector through the base cooperatives, and to bring it up higher to higher levels, and through participation and agreement for all of us to reach this information to the members of the cooperatives through this raising of sectorial needs, and to do this with the active participation of different committees, because it is extremely important for every cooperative, every federation to feel part of what is being developed with the association.
Daniela, please.
It is important to have a strategy, but to be realistic. And we are a very big organization, but we have very limited resources, and we have to prioritize, and we have to be very clear. And since we have limited resources, then I want to highlight three things. Intercooperation, to really truly create a link between the different cooperatives and sectors. We have a big potential if we look at the World Cooperative Monitor, and if we imagine the agricultural sector and the distribution and consumption together with the savings and loans cooperatives, the impact would be more significant. The second strategy is from the rhetoric speeches, producing impacts and creating action. For this, Cooperative of the Americas has provided, is always paying attention to the offer or services and products, also being able to share the knowledge and also communication. We are not sharing enough about the importance of our activities.
And I think that is such an excellent point to end on. That really rounds out this full agenda: education and training and cooperation among cooperatives within your country, within your community, regionally and globally. And 2025 is the perfect moment to do so. So we hope that you'll plug in with the folks on our panel today, on this webinar, and I'll turn it over to a key partner of NCBA CLUSA's Luann Werner with OCDC to close us out here. Thank you all.